Greetings, writers. My name is Tenesha L. Curtis, and I'm an indie author, book production manager, and owner of WriterWorks University. This brief course is going to walk you through, as the name implies, the basics of how to outline a book. Everything I'll show you can be applied to just about any kind of writing you can think of, from blog posts to legal contracts to restaurant menus to technical manuals. So learning these skills has benefits well beyond writing a book, including things like creating your book blurb, writing book proposals for traditional publishers, and creating advertising copy for your book promotions. That being said, do keep in mind that this is a strategy that I use and teach to my students and clients. That means it's a way to outline a book, not the way. If making adjustments to these steps is going to create a method that's more accessible to you, please make changes as needed. You're much more likely to use and benefit from a tool that is customized for you, so don't be afraid to do so. This session is going to cover what an outline is, what outlines are and are not built to do, how to create a book premise that you'll use to start your outline, how to create a 3-point outline, and how to create a 9-point outline. I'll provide you with places where you can pause the video and complete the step we just discussed. Most of these will only take you a minute or two, so you'll still be able to watch the video and complete the exercises in less than an hour in most cases. To keep things simple and fast, I'll focus on fiction throughout the course, but I will provide some examples at the end of what each step might look like for self-help books and memoirs. Even though you can complete these steps in less than an hour, if you need longer than that, take your time. There's no hurry. So, what is an outline? In a basic sense, an outline is just a plan. It's a time management tool that helps you get from point A to point B as simply as possible. We use outlines every single day in multiple aspects of our lives in order to complete tasks more quickly and with less hassle. When we travel, we may ask our GPS app for a suitable route to our destination. That's a plan. That's an outline. This route could help us arrive faster, spend less money on gas, or even avoid road closures and accidents. When we review what's on the menu at a restaurant, we're able to decide what we want to order. That's our plan for our meal. That's our outline for our dining experience. When we're browsing our favorite streaming service for shows and movies to watch, the lists that we are given help us decide what we want to see. Our selection is a plan, an outline for the night's cinematic entertainment. That said, most professionals who work with outlines, such as architects, politicians, or teachers, can tell you that plans almost always change. As new building ordinances are put into place, or new lobbyists enter a negotiation, or new data about a particular topic comes to light, all of these kinds of professionals will adjust their blueprints, policies, or lesson plans accordingly. This is kind of like sitting down at a restaurant, ordering what you want, but then coming to find out that they don't have a particular item or ingredient, so they have to replace whatever you originally ordered with an alternative. When it comes to writing a book, an outline serves a similar purpose. It provides a guide for what you'll be writing, but it will likely change throughout the book development process. As I'll show you, outlines are highly flexible though, so that means they could be as basic as 3 bullet points or as sophisticated as a detailed table that takes up multiple pages or anything in between. As long as you have easy access to the outline and can update it as you make changes to your manuscript, you're all set to take full advantage of this tool. What are outlines not built for? Generally speaking, outlines are built for certain things and not built for other things. So outlines are built to be flexible. They're living documents that you can change at will at any time. If you remove a chapter from your manuscript, take it out of your outline. If you add a character to your manuscript, add them to the outline. If you rearrange scenes in your story, make the same rearrangement in your outline. After it's created, your outline is simply a bird's eye view of what's in your book. Some people get frustrated with the idea of outlining because they only create one version of their outline, and then they try to follow it to the letter instead of adjusting it as they have new ideas. Outlines are built to organize those ideas. As with most tasks in life, if you start without a plan, things can get messy pretty quickly. Having a plan isn't going to write the book for you. Outlines aren't magic after all. But having a plan can mean a writing process that is much more clear. Outlines are built to reduce stress. Your outline can be adjusted throughout the writing process. However, sitting down to write a first draft with some idea of what you'll be creating means you can focus more on how to write what you want and less on thinking up what you're going to write. What many newbie writers call writer's block is harder to experience with a solid outline at hand. Writing without an outline can be kind of like trying to lay down train tracks as you're driving the train down them. Outlining can make things easier by separating the steps of conceptualization, meaning thinking of what you're going to write, and expression, meaning actually putting it down on the page. With your manuscript, you're laying down the general idea first and then attempting to write it. With the train, you're going to lay the track down first and then try to drive along it. Outlines are built to save you money. Because you've organized your ideas before you started writing, you're less likely to write into your manuscript things that an editor is going to change or remove later on. This means your manuscript is less likely to have a bunch of superfluous scenes or fluff. And since the manuscript is cleaner, that's less work for the editor to do, which means you may not have to pay them as much. Outlines are built to save you time. Writing with a plan means you spend less time backpedaling and restructuring. Having an outline won't eliminate the need for multiple drafts, of course, but with an outline, your third draft may end up looking like what it used to take you 10 drafts to accomplish. Now, imagine using a hammer to clean your windshield. Do you call the hammer a useless tool because it cracked the glass instead of clearing it? Hopefully not. After all, you used the hammer for something it wasn't built to do, so it's not a bad tool, it was just used ineffectively. Along the same vein, expecting an outline to do things it isn't built for can just end up stressing you out for no reason. Some people claim that outlines are generally unhelpful and shouldn't be used, but it's often because they've simply been using outlines inappropriately. Just like with a hammer having a set scope and purpose, there are some things outlines are not built to do. Outlines are not built to stifle creativity. As noted in the previous point, the outline starts off as a way to organize your thoughts and clarify your ideas in order to help you write your piece more easily and more quickly. But how creative your idea is a subjective thing that will vary from reader to reader. Maybe what you wrote is a relatively commonplace story. Think of a romance novel in which a woman moves back to her hometown after some kind of romantic or professional disappointment, only to fall in love with her old high school boyfriend. As many times as people may have heard, read, or seen that story in music, film, or literature, there are new readers being born every day. At some point, those new readers are going to come across this story for the very first time. To them, it might seem highly creative and new because they've never encountered it before. But to someone who has been reading romance novels for 40 years, it may seem not so out of the box, even if they had a good time reading it. So, using an outline or not has nothing to do with the creativity of your idea. It doesn't stop you from coming up with new ideas, and it's just meant to help make your job as a writer a little bit easier. Outlines are not built to stay the same. An outline is a flexible, living document that you can change however you want at any time. It belongs to you and is for you to use, not be constrained by. Outlines are not built to be forced upon people. If for some reason you have tried to effectively use an outline and you just don't want to, or it has somehow made your writing process worse, you can stop. The world of publishing is one of strategies and guidelines, not rules or laws. If this strategy doesn't work for you as is, customize it for your needs or don't use it at all. So now, premise prep. You may already have some elements of your story floating around in your head, but even if you don't, creating a premise will assist you with making sure your story has the 5 elements that I've always noticed in pieces that I thought were well written. I call these the 5 P's of premise prep. They are person, pain, prize, pitfalls, and promise. Once you have completed these prompts, you'll have the material you need to help you create a solid outline. Though I'll walk through these in order, you don't have to complete the piece in this order. For example, maybe you know what your person's prize is, but you aren't sure about their pain. You can go ahead and complete the prize section and deal with the pain later. Person. Your person is whoever the story is experienced through. This can be a single human being, a couple of deities, or a band of puppies, depending upon what kind of piece you're writing and for which audience. Even if you just have a character name, you've got enough to complete the person section of premise prep. But if there are other things that you know about your person, such as their favorite color, their physical appearance, or what they do for a living, add that to this section too. You can always change things later, but this gives you something to start with. There are 2 tricks you can use to help complete the person section with more than just a character name, if you wish. The first is to pretend that you are going to set your person up on a blind date with your best friend. What details would you share that you think your person will be comfortable with someone knowing on a first date? These could include things like where they grew up, what they studied in college, or what kind of car they drive. The second option is to consider what you would tell law enforcement if you had to file a missing person report for your person. This would include their physical description, of course, but could also touch on the places they like to hang out the most or their current living situation. This section isn't for deep, dark secrets, just a superficial sketch of your person. Take a few seconds or even a full minute to give a superficial description of your person. Consider details that your person wouldn't mind a stranger knowing. Those are the kinds of things you want to include in this section. You don't need to nail down every nitty-gritty detail of their existence. You can review the examples shown here to help you. Resume the video when you're ready to move forward. Pain. A person's pain is a problematic trait they have. Pain such as greed, being short-tempered, or being overly trusting are common examples. You can select a particular problematic trait you want them to have and move on. In genres that are more plot-focused, you can even pick a relatively superficial pain that's tied to your person's current situation. For example, if you're writing a murder mystery, you could list your detective's pain as simply not knowing who the killer is, since that is definitely a problematic trait for anyone to have. However, if you would like to create more four-dimensional characters that have a strong character arc readers can experience, consider using the Tombs exercise to go a little bit deeper. When you do this, your person's pain becomes the beginning of their arc throughout the book. A character doesn't have an arc if they start and end the story as exactly the same person. The story hasn't had any kind of impact on them. But when they go from being greedy to generous, or not knowing who the killer is to finding out who the killer is, or needing to move out of an abusive household to having moved out of an abusive household, your readers get some level of character arc. TOMBS is an acronym for trait, origin, manifestation, benefits, and sacrifices. The trait is just what it sounds like. It's whatever traits you want your person to have. Let's use Little Red Riding Hood as an example, and our fictional detective. Again, for something like a murder mystery, you can just list not knowing who the killer is as their pain and move on. But I'll go ahead and flesh out the superficial pain just to illustrate how the Tombs exercise works. So for Red, we could say that her trait is being overly trusting. Done. For our detective, we'll call her Detective Scribe. Her trait will be that she doesn't know who murdered the local librarian. Now that we've got our traits, we can move on to origin. The origin of the trait is simply where it came from or how it developed. For Red, we could say that she grew up surrounded by trustworthy people her entire life, so she's never had a reason to be suspicious or skeptical of anyone. For Detective Scribe, not knowing who killed the librarian stems from her not being the killer herself, of course, and not yet having enough information to determine who the killer might be. Manifestation is how the trait exhibits itself on a regular basis. Imagine there is someone who gets to shadow your person from a distance for a day. What might your person do that would showcase their trait so well that this stranger could figure out what that trait was without ever having met your person? For Red, this might look like following given instructions without hesitation, readily going into the homes and businesses of people she doesn't know well, and leaving her belongings out where anyone can take them. For Detective Scribe, this will look like going around town asking people questions, reviewing security camera footage from the library, repeatedly inspecting the crime scene, and regularly interacting with other people tied to her profession, such as medical examiners, insurance agents, DNA specialists, or canine units. Humans are wired to do things that are pleasurable and avoid things that are uncomfortable. So someone holding on to a particular trait usually means that there is some level of benefit to it, or at least that they perceive some kind of benefit. Red is seen as delightful and an obedient child. She has no trouble making friends and maintains pleasant relationships with everyone in the village. Detective Scribe continues to get a paycheck so long as she does her job of investigating the latest murder. She'll also, hopefully, eventually relieve her curiosity and get closure for the librarian's family by identifying, capturing, and arresting the killer. On the flip side, there is a reason that the trait is problematic. Here is where you can list what your person is giving up or missing out on because of their trait. Red is vulnerable to unethical entities, so the minute she comes across one, she'll be an easy target for manipulation and victimization. Detective Scribe is missing out on time with friends and family and not getting enough sleep since her lack of plausible suspects is driving her to work so hard to find the killer. Take time to write down what your person's pain is. If you don't use a Tombs exercise, this may only take a few seconds as you note the pain that you want them to have. If you do use the Tombs exercise, you might need closer to 5 minutes to complete all 5 sections. Take a look at the examples and pause the video so you can complete the pain step. Resume the video whenever you finish. Prize and pitfalls, like person, are pretty straightforward. A person's prize is simply what they want, tangible or intangible, legal or illegal, harmful or healthy. What does your person desire, especially as it relates to the beginning of the story? So Red's prize can be getting to Grady's house as soon as possible. That's what her mother told her to do, so that's what she wants to do. Detective Scribe wants to find the librarian's killer. Easy. Pitfalls are things standing between your person and their prize. These can be all kinds of challenges, including ones having to do with finances, mental health, politics, physical injuries, miscommunications with others, and more. Your person's pain can automatically be one of your pitfalls. So Red's pitfalls are going to be her overly trusting nature and the wolf that she'll run into along her journey to Granny's house. Detective Scribe's pitfalls might include red tape related to getting information about the killer or the victim that might help her solve the case. Other pitfalls can be things like the killer threatening her life if she doesn't stop the investigation, or false and irrelevant tips from the public. Take a minute to write down one prize that your person is after. Then write at least 3 pitfalls for them. I recommend you make one of those 3 their pain. Pause the video, review the examples, write your own prize and pitfalls, and then resume the video when you're ready. The 5th and final P is promise. This is all about the kind of reading experience you plan on providing to your customers. On some product listings or even product packaging, you'll often see a what's in the box section that tells you what pieces, cords, attachment, paperwork, or other elements are contained within the product package. This is similar and consists of a few key elements. First, consider what genre you think your idea fits into and what audience you're writing for. You can change this later as the manuscript matures, but it can help to have an idea of what your goal is at least. Examples might be a fairy tale for children, a contemporary transgender romance, a psychological thriller for young adults, and so on. Taking your genre and audience into consideration in the planning stages can influence how you outline and write the book. Writing a book as if it is meant for 5-year-olds is quite different from writing a book meant to be read by adults. Second, if you have a robust character arc, how do you plan on the character having changed by the end of the piece? The answer to that question would be included here. For example, Red would go from being overly trusting at the beginning of the story to being more careful about who she trusts by the end of the story. While character arcs do often involve a character making a 180-degree change, that's not always the case. Maybe the greedy character becomes a bit less greedy, though by no means openly generous. Or maybe the guy who was searching for love gets into a promising relationship with someone, but hasn't actually fallen in love with them yet. This slight shift, you can call it a 90-degree turn if you like, is used quite a bit in series because the full change is drawn out over the course of 2 or more books. For instance, maybe book 1 covers Detective Scribe finding the librarian's killer only to discover that they were hired by someone else. So she sort of found out who the killer is, but not really. There's more to the story that will be revealed in the sequel. Third, consider at least one adjective to describe the tone or mood of how you want the book to read. You might use descriptors like heartwarming, inspirational, harrowing, hilarious, tragic, thought-provoking, etc. A harrowing children's fairy tale is different from a thought-provoking children's fairy tale or a cautionary children's fairy tale. Fourth, if you have one, would be a theme that you want the book to exemplify. Note that this isn't necessary. Some people just like to inject their stories with life lessons or social commentary or other kinds of statements. If you don't have a theme in mind, don't fret, just move on. Shoppers have a wide range of options to choose from when it comes to selecting their next read, so understanding where you want to fall within the spectrum of reading experiences only helps you be more likely to satisfy that kind of reader. And if you start writing with an understanding of your book's promise, you can spend less time editing the book to make it fit into the intended genre or niche. This saves you time and money on professional editing services once you get to that point. Take a minute to write down the elements of your promise. If you haven't thought about some of these points up to now, that's okay. Write down what comes easily to you and you can fill in the rest later if you want to. Pause this video, review the examples on the screen, write out your own promise, and resume the video when you're ready. Now that you've done your prep, just put the pieces together into a single paragraph and you've got your premise. Since no one has to see this but you, don't be overly concerned about things like spelling or punctuation right now. I've provided a template, but you can feel free to rearrange the setup and wording in a way that sounds stronger to you. So long as all 5 Ps are represented, you're good to go. Pause the video, take a moment to read the provided template and examples, and then take about 5 minutes to write your own premise down. With your premise in hand, it's time to start outlining. A 3-point outline is just that, an outline with 3 points. This is the easiest and fastest kind of outline to make. If you think you can jump into writing your first draft with just these 3 guide points, go for it. If you prefer to have a little more support, we'll get to that shortly. For a 3-point outline, consider something that would happen toward the beginning, middle, and end of the book. These don't have to be the exact first scene or the precise middle or the true ending of just something that happens towards the beginning, something that happens towards the end, and then something that happens between those 2 points. For instance, for Little Red Riding Hood, toward the beginning of the piece, she is sent to her granny's house with food and medicine. Toward the middle, she encounters the wolf in the forest. Towards the end, she's swallowed by the wolf. Notice how there are likely things that happen in the story before her mother sends her off, between her send-off and meeting the wolf, between meeting the wolf and before being swallowed, and after being swallowed. That's because, again, we're just putting a general chronology together. This isn't a super detailed scene list or beat sheet. This kind of outline gives us a general direction to go in without a lot of guidance between those points. Take about a minute to write out your 3-point outline based on your premise. Remember that these don't need to be exact plot points, but should generally reflect a storyline that fits the premise you came up with. Pause the video and create your 3 points. Resume the video when you're ready to learn one more trick I have up my sleeve related to outlining. 9-point outline. 3 bullet points leaves a lot of space that you'll need to fill in on your own. If you prefer not to have to do that, then consider creating an outline with more points already filled in. In order to do this, I use a method I call unpacking. Before each of the 3 points, ask yourself what happens right before this point. After each of the 3 points, ask yourself what happens right after this point. That will give you 6 questions to answer. Once you've answered them, you'll have an additional 6 points to work with in chronological order for a total of 9 points. As noted in the previous section, this is where you can fill in some of those elements of the story that are missing from a 3-point outline. And you can unpack as much as you like. You can turn a 9-point outline into a 27-point outline. You can turn 27 points into 81, and so on. My suggestion is to either do 9 or 27. Any more than 27 can get a bit tedious and time-consuming. But if you really want to, go for it. Like I said in the beginning, make this strategy work for you by customizing it for your preferences and needs. Take a few minutes now to unpack your 3 points into 9. Even if you only plan on using a 3-point outline right now, you might find that practicing this skill is useful for future places where you might struggle with bridging the gap between 2 points. You can stop and start unpacking on both sides until you find an appropriate plot point that provides a segue between the point you're currently writing and the point you're writing toward. Pause the video now, take a look at the provided examples, and resume when you're ready. While you can continue to use a bulleted list as your outline grows, there is another option that I personally use that some of you may find more beneficial. This detailed outline helps me start any project with well-defined beats and a bit more detail. By creating a 3-column table, I can track the chapters, scenes, and beat notes for each of the sections of the book. I can even leave notes and prompts for myself regarding what details to include in a particular scene or how to present certain information, through dialogue, through behavior, through exposition, etc. I have found this way of organizing my outline creates a lot less work for me once I start writing the piece. When it comes to using your outline, here's my general guidance. First, take a break from the outline and then return to it at a later date. For an outline, even waiting a full 24 hours and then rereading your plan can help you come up with additional ideas and fill in additional information as needed. You might even find yourself discovering a plot hole or 2. If you do, you can repair those now by adding a couple of sentences to your outline. This is a lot faster, easier, and less frustrating than trying to repair these issues in a completed manuscript where you may need to add, remove, or rearrange entire scenes or chapters in order to fix the problem. A benefit of outlining is being able to prevent yourself from writing certain issues into your first draft, meaning they don't need to be edited out later on. After you've made your own adjustments, you can touch base with some volunteers or even hire a professional developmental editor to review the outline and let you know if they see any major preliminary issues. This step is not mandatory by any means. It's just another option to help you start writing your manuscript from a place of strength and confidence. Members of your writing critique group may be willing to help you with this step for free. But even if you're on a tight budget, asking a professional to assist with an outline review is probably one of the cheapest services you can purchase, especially if your outline is only a few hundred words long. Check out places like the Editorial Freelancers Association, the Society for Editing, or the Alliance for Independent Authors to find seasoned, savvy, ethical editorial professionals who can help you with an outline review. Once your outline is all set, it's time to start writing. If you're not sure how to begin, there are 2 common methods you might want to consider. The first option is to create daily or weekly word count deadline goals for yourself. This means that each day or week you sit down and write until you reach a particular word count goal. So if your daily word count goal is 200, then you'll write until you hit 200 words on Saturday, 400 words on Sunday, 600 words on Monday, and so on until you've written everything you've outlined. One possible issue you may run into with this method is overwriting or underwriting. You can overwrite when you are writing a scene that doesn't take as many words to write as you have set for your goal. You can underwrite when you have a lot more content than your current word count goal will allow. If a scene takes 1,000 words to write, but you set a goal of 2,000 words, you may try to write 1,000 more words for that scene and inject a bunch of fluff into it that will slow down your pacing and just end up being cut in the next draft anyway. If a scene takes 500 words to write, but you've set a goal of 200 words, you may fly through a scene quickly because your goal is so much shorter than the room you need to write out what happens in a more detailed and compelling way. This can make the writing feel rushed to the reader. You are guaranteed to run into these issues, but it can help to understand that they could happen and guard against them. This means not being afraid to go over or under your word count goal for the day. Another option is to simply break a scene up into multiple writing sessions. This can be frustrating sometimes if you feel like momentum is being broken, but it's often a better alternative to writing a bunch of fluff and/or holes into the piece. A second option is to write your first draft beat by beat instead of by the word count. This just means measuring your progress by each of the points on your outline instead of worrying about word count at all. For example, if you do 3 writing sessions each week and you have a 9-point outline, you would write point 1 during your first session, point 2 during your second session, and so on. In theory, you could be done with the first draft in 3 weeks or so. This method can help you reduce the amount of overwriting and underwriting that happens because you're not paying attention to the word count, only the content that's being generated. You write each beat until it's done, whether that happens in 300 words or 1,000 words. Some people experience higher stress and anxiety about word count tracking because it can seem more like trying to complete a homework assignment before a deadline. The pressure of hitting the word count is too much, so this method can be easier and more relaxing for some. In this session, we've covered what outlines are, what they're built to do and not do, how to create a premise to build an outline from, how to create a 3-point outline, and how to create a 9-point outline. Key points to remember are that outlines are flexible, living documents you can carry with you throughout the book development process. Outlines are time management tools meant to help make your job as a writer easier. Outlines can be short lists of scenes or plot points, or they can be detailed tables that are multiple pages long or anything in between. Once your outline is complete, you can get volunteer or professional assistance with making it stronger. When you start writing, you can track your progress and set goals using either the word count of the document or how far along in your outline you've written. While you don't have to use an outline to write a solid book that your audience will enjoy reading, it offers multiple benefits to you as an author, both literarily and logistically. That's all I have for now. Enjoy the other classes that are part of the conference, and don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need help. You can connect with me and WriterWorks University at getbookhelp.com or via phone at 404-384-5258. Happy outlining!